again, my friends. I know it's been some time since I've posted a video, but by looking at what you can see on the model, it is clearly a German tank of the heavy variety, and I plan to do a collaboration with my good friend Plastic Panzer Factory, as we plan on building and painting that same model in a future video. But you can also see here a quick little sneak peek of another future project. But I also like to make a quick few announcements of one, thanking you all so much for the 1,000 subscribers that we've recently reached, but I know I'm 258 subscribers late as of now, but I can't thank you all enough so much. It's all thanks to you, and I have my mind blown completely that I've managed to make it this far. You can also find my Discord, which I'll leave a link in the description, as well as my Instagram and my Patreon. But I'll also leave a description for my good friend's channel that you'll find there. Now let's get to the real part of the video. Now, I'm sure you can already tell that the model has already been primed with my AK black primer, and you're about to see this life color white primer, which I find to be excellent and is very matte once you apply it on in multiple thin layers, especially with a brush. And I think it even says that you can also airbrush it, for those of you who own an airbrush. But honestly, this first part of the this tank, well, actually it was going to be a speed paint video, but I quickly changed my mind as it took me longer than I expected to. But also you see a new paint that we're using, Model Master, which sadly are being discontinued and are going to become more rare to find in around shops, and probably more expensive online. But as you can see, it works a lot like Tamiya paints, but I obviously did not thin down the paint here, which is something I don't recommend for those of you who are new and are just trying out the hobby for your first time. The only reason why I am doing this is because, again, I was trying to speed paint this almost as fast as I could, but initially I couldn't bring myself to do it as I wanted to put more time and effort into it. But I promise you I'll bring in another speed painting technique in another future video. But as you can tell, I used a cheap old brush, and it's very fast and efficient for just applying it on in, well, a random succession of a thin layer. But also you could tell that when I stirred it, it has a little bit of liquid, which is the medium that suspends the paint and what holds it together as its binder. But initially I probably should have just thinned it the traditional way, but later on in the final results, it seems that it didn't really have any effect. Just if you're planning on doing this, make sure it is thin, like as you saw there, even though it was already thick straight out of the bottle. But now we can begin mixing it with Tamiya white and the 1943 Dunkelgelb, or dark yellow. But I quickly want to make a quick, obvious choice of not using Tamiya paint with this Dunkelgelb color of Model Master, because one, it'll dry way too fast than that you would want to, and it makes it for really weird and strange dry spots that just don't look right. And you might spot that later on here as I have to try to fix it, and I instead just decide to use Vallejo or white paint, which is very efficient for just giving us that little bit of extra time. Obviously it's still acrylic and it'll take some time to dry, but it really helps for giving us that quick little dry brush or overbrush effect that you may have seen me do before. But all in all, it's actually quite a fun technique, and I think it's something that you should try differently. Just make sure you don't use any of your good detail brushes, as obviously I'm using a cheap old brush that you saw there that's been frayed out for a while. But of course, I also wanted to try sort of with pre-blending or a sort of a pre-airbrushing stage of obviously pre-shading. There we go. As I used a brown wash for just applying onto the model and I eventually want to add back on the same highlights as I did before, without the need of having to remove it with a cotton bud and water. So I'll let you watch out the rest and see how I do it. Please also note that I'm just once again was trying to speed paint this model and trying to get as quick highlights as fast as I can. But I really think it didn't do that bad of a job, but I'll leave you that up to one to decide. And give me your thoughts on what could have been better or what should have been done differently. And then of course I mixed together olive brown from Viejo and this Equate liquid hand soap from the pump and just mixed it together with water, making sure it's nice and smooth, as this is pretty much my signature acrylic soap wash, which I think is very nice and efficient for getting into those deep crevices and accentuating those details. I use basalt gray and refractive green for painting on the details, for refractive green using it for the two jerry cans, and basalt gray for the metal parts on the model. And now I can begin to use the Balkan Cruise symbol that you see there in just white, and use Mark Fit Strong to apply it on the side of the turret and on the rear of the tank. It fits in nicely, and I of course will also add on my matte medium from Vehicle, which will, in a couple layers or three, will hopefully hide that decal film sheet that you'll see right here at the beginning. I also add on some damage with the black brown paint that you see me use later on as well. And now for the weathering, I'm using a mixture of Iraqi sand and flat earth, and also mixed in with some sky gray. I'm basing it off this photo here from another scale modeler, which sadly I don't think posts their videos anymore, especially since I think their last one was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But I'll leave a link to their video that you see there on how they weathered their own tracks. And as you can see there, in the photo, it looks absolutely amazing, and I only hope to get to that point someday. But of course, I mixed the two paints in my palette, well, actually the sky gray as well. But eventually, I'm just using flat earth and Iraqi sand just as a nice base layer, as well as my weathering, and of course the main paints of earth that we use for the diorama. But of course, you may be wondering why the right track there is painted in a metallic color. That's because I was experimenting with some life color metallic paints. But it also helps to have some good little reference here, like as you can see there from an actual German captured KV-1. But I really don't have any specified method of applying on this weathering, as I pretty much, you can already tell that I'm trying to pre-dust and add some sort of light dry mud just before we add on the wet mud effects. You know, obviously using my spackle. It's the Spackling's white putty that I've used before, and it's very helpful for just not only snow, but I mixed it in with some light gray and some sand yellowish color. And it's very nice and easy to mixture, as I've clearly labeled it there, dry mud. But here I think it works excellently as a acrylic texture with no horrible smells, and just relatively ease of working your way through it. It's very simple and a lot of fun, but be careful not to get too carried away, as I may have done so here. But all in all, I think it's just absolutely great just to work with, and you save a lot of money just for buying it for $11 in a very large tub, which of course for me it'll last me a lifetime. Now I can begin to speck on chocolate brown and flat earth, both mixed together, as well as just adding on flat earth on its own in a random speckling method. I would not follow this step, as I actually ended up adding a little bit too much red, as you really only want a subtle amount of red brown, as I really tried to copy and studied the photo of that KV-1 weathered rear that I showed you earlier. But if you do happen to be weathering your model with a reddish brown color, then well, go ahead. You can use the red color just to help you in that nice sort of a setting of a red-brown like country. As you saw me apply on the dark stains and wet mud effects of, just mixing in the previous colors we had, the flat earth and chocolate brown with a little bit of black, I can now make it look like really wet mud with the grease stain effect as well with the Tamiya clear paint, which is very effective in doing this. You can also choose to use your choice of gloss varnish, which should work just as well and it will look very nice and wet. I then now begin to speckle on the dry mud that you saw me use earlier as a random little texture effect, as well as on the fenders and the rear of the tank. What better way to use real weathering with real earth? I use real dried up earth from my backyard as a nice accumulated texture effect on the fenders of dirt that would have built up on the side of the fenders. It is very nice and easy and simple, such as a beginner as myself. It's very fun and efficient, especially with these two products of using matte medium and airbrush thinner. The airbrush thinner will help reach those deep areas of detail and also help improve the flow of the matte medium rather than just using water. But I do actually end up using a little bit of water just to help increase that flow, that tension of reaching those nice deep crevices that you see on the fenders. And for me personally, I find this to be a great way of fixing on any gravel or sand or any other pieces of dirt that you want to add on to your model. And you can also see later on that I use a hair dryer, but also I try to use a toothpick to remove it and even scrape it off. But not even that will remove it, as you can also tell from certain lighting of angles that the matte medium has done an excellent job of staying nice and matte with no glossy or satin finish. And of course, for the dry dirt effect, I mixed together sky gray and Iraqi sand as our nice dry earth effect, as you can tell on the sides of the tracks. And now a nice little natural nature effect. I use some nice green scenery or also other stuff that I found from my house, like from real plants, and also just from packets of little bushes that I have gotten from a local hobby shop. But they make a nice effect of also using some dry grass that we can add to the sides of the tracks to give the idea that the KV-1 has been driving through the countryside of not just paved roads and natural already dirt that has been crushed down, but a lot of accumulated vegetation that is driven through over time. And I personally think it adds a nice little green touch. But I'd also like to apologize to you all of not showing how I painted the stowage that you see on the back rear of the KV-1, but I promise to make it all up to you in another future video of how I painted the stowage. But of course, you can see here that I was already experimenting on how I could get a nice texture effect, as I don't have an already pre-made product. So I decided to use and fix the dry earth I had in my backyard with the PVA glue that you saw there, or that thick model glue, which does a very nice job of fixing in together even this natural dirt effect. And personally, I really enjoyed this easy method of just sprinkling it on with the spoon and also just adding that nice texture effect, which to me is also satisfying. Now I decided to try again at bush painting little 1/72 scale models, but as you can see it's already primed in black and dry brushed with white to accentuate those details. But I've also, here you can see, painted two German models, one with a Flammenwerfer and one just carrying a rifle. And these two or three come from a Heller infantry German set, as it came to surprise to me that they actually are also from Airfix, but in 1/76 scale. But I also even compared the two of 1/76 and 1/72, and they are exactly the same size. I guess really the kit is living up to its $12 price, but for anyone beginning and starting out, I think that little set is perfect for you to practice on and have a go at painting your own little 1/72 scale figures. But as you can also see that I based my little German machine gunner here from the internet of a German machine gunner who has a MG42 on his back, and I thought an interesting camouflage pattern on his chest and on his helmet. But as well as this is just me showing how I painted it, and in no way an expert or even decently good way of painting a figure. As I change my ways of, you can tell by the brown pants, as well as trying to add a dark wash. But I'll leave that up to you to decide of how you want to paint your own figures, as this is just showing you how I happen to paint this German machine gunner. And a very important builder's note that I like to make is that these figures are some of the most difficult plastic I've ever had to work with in my entire whole year of scale modeling. And really, honestly, that these are impossible to remove with the mold lines on the plastic, even with a sharp hobby knife, plastic cement, and almost barely by using a super glue method and having to sand it down, which did somewhat work. But again, I did get what I purchased for, and they are very old and outdated little figures. But I think they still do get the job done of showing beginners such as myself on how to paint figures and hopefully improve my skills. So, really, I think this is a great basis just for getting started, especially since they come in a nice variety of poses. But again, I honestly had a lot of fun in painting it, and I think you will as well. Now here I'm just experimenting with red brown, as initially I didn't. I really wanted to see if I could try and replicate the flat earth, Iraqi sand, and the chocolate brown effect just by using the red brown from Tamiya, some black, sand ivory, and a little bit of orange rust, all from Vallejo, as you can see here now. But of course, I just ended up going towards the very end just by using the flat earth, the Iraqi sand, and of course, using it for wet effects. I mix it in with black, and I did a very nice job of getting that nice idea of an Eastern Front kind of situation of where the ground is still sort of satin, or it has some moisture in it, and also the outside areas from the road are still dry, and maybe some parts are even more wet than others, especially as you can see there in the shell crater at the very end. But here I'm just using for a little mock-up fence that has also been connected and also broken down from the shell crater that you see there. And of course, to fix it in place, I use super glue from Loctite to nicely secure it, as I kind of struggle here to squeeze it in between, as I very nicely just stick it in between the two other toothpicks, and it does a half decent job of staying together. But overall, I think I was pretty happy with creating my own little homemade fence, especially since I use other wooden sticks like these coffee stirrers, and also using the PVA glue that you see there just for the basis of them, as really I really want to plan on doing more of this kind of stuff, of adding bits of destruction, maybe rubble, and also broken up wood, as you can see here. And this is literally the only time that you'll ever see me use a dark brown enamel paint from Tamiya, is because, well, I purchased that at the very first time that I got into scale modeling, and I still don't know why I have it. And now this is pretty much its only purpose, basically. So I might as well use it now. And of course, to fix the model in place of the tank, I also want to make it look like it was pushing through a large amount of mud on the edge of the tracks. I put in a little bit of the spackling, the acrylic white putty you saw me use to make texture earlier. And to really fix it in place, of course, I use the thick model glue, which will almost make it impossible to remove. But you can also even use super glue if it has no reaction to the type of product that you're using. And of course, it took me some time to adjust it and even apply on more thick layers of mud to help blend it in to the diorama. Now to paint the grass, I use olive green, German camouflage bright green, and buff, which is just a nice sort of khaki yellow color. And I think it does a very nice job of painting on the nice tall grass and even the short grass that you see there, and as well as the other vegetation that you can see in the bundles of bushes and other branches and other bits of shrubs that you see on the model, or especially the diorama. And I quickly do some quick little highlights of mixing in buff with bright green or just using bright green by itself, trying to add a variety and a nice colorful vividness of the grass, rather than it looking very dull and boring. I decided to use flat earth, Araki sand, and khaki for my wood effect color, as I don't want the house to be entirely burned down of just black and ash, as adding this color will add some interest, and I eventually will add on some dark brown and brown washes to help improve the effect, as well as I do the same for the broken down fence and the other side of the fence that you see there. And if you're also curious of what that Pack 40 is doing there, and of course it's abandoned, and it actually comes from a 1/72 scale Zvezda kit. As of course I also show you here, I use beige brown and desert yellow for the fence, just as another two colors that you can use for wood color, of course. And later on you'll see me add on the ash effect, as in using real ash, and I also use Tamiya flat base to make my flat black even more flat, or I guess flatter than it actually already is. I highly recommend the Tamiya flat base color, as I had it on special order from Andy's hobby headquarters, and which I was very happy with my purchase, and it does an excellent job of turning any satin or glossy paint into an excellent matte finish. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, as I am happy that if you've managed to make it this far, then I greatly appreciate you and all the support, especially since our huge breakthrough of over 1,000 subscribers and continuing on more. And again, I just can't believe it. I managed to reach my goal, especially since that it's been or at least over 2 months. No, I'm sorry, but I promise to bring you all more content of more future models, especially of that German heavy tank that you saw at the beginning, especially with my good friend. So I will see you all next time, and here is the final presentation of the diorama.